Okay, so we'll go for it then.
Yeah.
Right. So
What do you want
so I'll just say, well, having a chat with Becky Storrie. So Becky is one of my clients through What's Up Performance, ridden for the Isle of Man. Hopeful for the Commonwealth Games in 2022. That's right now, isn't it? I've got to catch myself on all the dates now because everything's changed.
Yeah.
Gold medalist in the Island Games in Gibraltar, and progressing well. Hoping to do far more with the sport as things go along. So good having you, Becky. And so
Thank you for
really,
having me.
we're just having a chat and seeing what Becky's been up to, what's kind of in the future, and finding out a little bit more. So the interesting thing is your pathway to where you are now, Becky. So we know you started off in triathlon, and then
Yeah.
here you are now as a fully fledged cyclist. So how have you gotten to where you've gotten now?
I know, who'd have thought it? It's usually the cyclists turning triathletes these days, isn't it? Rather than the triathletes turning cyclists. Yeah, so I started, well, from a young age, I've always swam. That's something kind of, my mum kind of pushed us into. Well, not pushed us into, but she always wanted us, me and my sister to learn how to swim. I'm sure she won't mind me saying she's terrified of water, and can't swim herself. So that was something she was like, I want my children, that's a really important skill to have. So I swam from the island from about the age of 10, I think. Was absolutely loving it. Swimming, 6, 7 times a week. And then when I was 14, one of the lifeguards at the NSC said, "Oh, we're doing a triathlon. Why don't you give it a go? You look like you'd be good at it. I don't know why, but maybe just because I could swim." And I thought, oh yeah, why not? At the time, it was the children's triathlon. They
Oh yeah,
do kind of every year now. I think it is they do it every year.
yeah, they do. Yeah,
Yeah. So I was 14, but then but then they said, oh well, you can do the children's one, but you'll be one of the oldest in it, or you can do the May Sprint triathlon because 14 is like the minimum age.
right.
You can do it. And my dad thought, oh yeah, like do that. The kids one's not long enough for you. Like you'll be fine, like doing the May Sprint because it was only like I can't even think now. It's been that long. 800 meters, isn't it? And then 20k on the bike and a 5k run.
Yeah,
So I thought, oh yeah, okay, why not? I hadn't ran. Like I didn't train running. All I did was swim. I didn't even own a road bike. Um, I mean, obviously I knew how to ride a bike, but I didn't have one. So I was fortunate enough. Lizzie, actually, another one of your clients,
okay.
lent me one of her road bikes, kindly. Although I crashed it, so I don't think she'll be lending me a bike again anytime soon. So I started going out on the bike with my dad, and only for like 40 minutes, and to me, like back then, that was a big ride. Like
Yeah,
I'd get in after doing these 40-minute rides, thinking, God, I've done a big day on the bike. I laugh about that now,
but it is
because
at
obviously it's
14 though.
well at 14, yeah, I guess so. But like, yeah, I don't know. Even as I developed in the triathlon world, we never did. I mean, obviously the amount of hours that we do now, because you've got 3 sports to think about. So to cut a long story short, that was my first triathlon. I mean, it wasn't perfect. Like I said, I crashed and you know dragged myself around it, but finished it and absolutely loved it, and thought this is exactly right up my street. Um, Started taking it more seriously. Ended up getting onto the Northwest Academy
Yeah,
triathlon, so I had to go away every other weekend. I was very fortunate that my parents, obviously support me because it was a lot. My dad would like give up, take time off work, take me on the boat every single weekend. And we'd be, he'd just stay in a hotel for the weekend and wait for me while I was in the peaks, doing my training camps. And
Oh, great.
from there, got onto the England talent squad. The next step after I was third British champs as a junior.
Okay.
So that got me onto the England talent squad there, and then that's kind of how I ended up at Stirling University, where I am now. Following that British champs result, I got kind of scouted, and a coach from up here said, why don't you come and train at Stirling? Because that was at like that time I was doing my A levels, kind of looking for like the next step. What was I going to do after school? And I hadn't really thought about university at all. I never wanted to go, because I didn't know what I would study. Wow. So I ended up coming, which is strange because I absolutely love uni now.
Yeah.
And the degree that I'm doing. Came up here the summer before I was meant to start in September. Did a 2-week little training camp up here with everyone. Was like, yeah, I'm coming. Like, didn't apply for any other university. You have 5 options when you apply to uni. I just applied for Stirling.
You just knew
which
Stirling,
my mom.
Stirling just felt right to you, did it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I gave my mom nearly a nervous breakdown over the whole thing, because she thought, Beck, she really should, maybe apply for other unis and have a backup. And I was like, no, like, there's no point. Like, even if there's no point in applying when I know that that's not where I want to go. Like, yeah. I'm only going to apply to somewhere that I can see myself living and training. So scraped myself in, managed to get myself a sports scholarship. My grades weren't anything exceptional, so they wouldn't have got me in. So I was very fortunate on that side of things. And then 2 years into training for triathlon up here, pretty much full time. We were doing 25-30 hours a week training, on top of doing our degree, which was a lot. And I ended up getting sick and got chronic fatigue in, I think it was June 2018.
Yeah.
Just from, like I said, we were doing 25 hours a week, and I was also doing a degree, and it just, too much.
Still very young then, really, as well.
Yeah, really young. Because I've only been, 19, still a young girl. My body just, but I was training like I was, a full-time elite athlete, doing more hours than some men would do. Which I guess was, maybe a fault on my part. I've got quite an addictive personality. But I'm aware of that, and that's something that I'm conscious of in my training now, and I've learned a lot from that experience. I just didn't know where my limit was. I would just keep going until I dropped, and I did drop. I learned the hard way. 6 months off nothing, not even a bit of exercise, which is quite a hard thing to go through when my whole life has been, I do sport because it brought meaning to my life.
Yeah.
So then to not have it was quite a tough thing to deal with. And when I was getting back into it, I just started, the cycling was the easiest part. It wasn't, demanding on my body like running is. The swimming was, I wasn't getting up for early morning sessions because I couldn't. So that was kind of my road to recovery, was the bike. And I just fell in love with it, really. Yeah. And I just thought, I don't want to go back to doing 3 sports. One's much more manageable. And I'm not saying that cycling's easier than triathlon, or triathlon's easier than cycling, because they're 2 completely different sports. Yeah. But it was just, for me, it was manageable. So definitely that's kind of how I ended up where I am today.
Yeah, and that's where I remember when we first started talking about working together and coaching you, that was the same story you gave me, and I found that really interesting that you'd kind of gone down that path and gone, worked so hard that you've just driven yourself into the ground basically. Um,
Yeah.
but still had the drive to come out the other side. You knew you had to.
Mhm.
That was completely unsustainable. Um,
Yeah.
and then really kind of wanted to do something with sport again, which was great to hear, and well,
Yeah. I think.
really made me want to work with you in the first place, to know where you'd been from that much fatigue, like chronic fatigue syndrome, and just to help you
Mhm.
get back on the right path basically, and really work
Yeah.
with you along those lines. I found that, well, I still do find that really interesting with you.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There was definitely, a point during those 6 months when I was at my worst where I just thought, like, this is it. Like, I'm not gonna. This is it. I'm done with sports in the past now. Like, I'm just gonna have to, focus on finishing my degree, and my health was a priority. But then, because my whole life had been sport, all my friendships, my relationship was all, based around sport.
Yeah.
So, being out of that meant, potentially sacrificing all those other things that,
Yeah,
the beauty
you
of
lose your
sport you
whole
get.
social circle basically, don't you?
Yeah, my whole social life was athletes.
Yeah.
Um, and coming out of that was probably hard as well because I wasn't training, I wasn't seeing my friends.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and my boyfriend being he was a triathlete, now cyclist as well, watching who I live with, watching him going out training, and I just was having to stay in the flat. That was quite hard. Um, and still being so, so tell me about your day, tell me about your training, when really I didn't want to hear it because I
Yeah.
couldn't. Like, last thing I wanted to hear about, like, but it's, but yeah, so it was like either, get back into it. You just got to pick yourself back up, haven't you,
Yeah.
when these things happen.
Well, I mean, that's knowing you now for the last few years, that's what you are very good at as well. You're extremely strong-willed. Um,
Mm.
I certainly wouldn't want to back you into a corner. There's no doubt you're coming out fighting. But that's definitely something that you've got, on your side. There's nothing stopping you, that's for sure. Great confidence. Great
Yeah.
to see, put you in a race situation and like a leadership role, for example, and you
Mhm.
embrace that from what I've seen, which
Yeah.
is, you don't see in very many people actually. It's a great quality to have, and to be able to take on that pressure and really embrace it, and use that with
Yeah.
the team as well. So I've seen you use that within the team at the Island Games and other events that
Yeah.
you've done, where you can take on that responsibility and kind of lead everyone
Mhm.
else around you as well, but make that whole unit, as work really well together.
Yeah.
But
See, I find that interesting because I would never usually. I mean, I know I'm very outgoing, and sometimes you can't shut me up, but I would never say, I'm a natural like leader. I don't know why, just myself. I just wouldn't. But I think, and in sport, sport is so cutthroat, and so it should be, in my opinion. That's, well, performance sport.
yeah,
That's what it's all about. But it is, like you say, confidence is everything. Like, even if you've not got it, fake it till you make it. Like,
yeah,
that's the motto I have. You'll only hold yourself back. Um, you've just got to give it everything.
and that
So
exactly. I mean, I suppose, well, with your course in uni, so you
yeah.
just tell me what you do in uni.
So I'm doing a joint honours degree in psychology and sport.
Yeah.
Um,
So do you
so yeah.
find, have you found that's helped you in sport since you started doing that? Has that really helped you kind of train the way you think, basically,
Yeah,
so that mindset?
I'd say so. I do, like, I do psychology and I do sport. It's not sports psychology. So a
Yeah.
lot of the psychology stuff is still, you know, like clinical, mental health disorders, cognition, all to do with the brain and learn how the brain works, and developmental children. But then the sports side of it is obviously, the sport, being in the sports industry, working with athletes. So I kind of, even though it's not sports psychology, I bring the two together for
Yeah.
that sports psychology aspect of it. And yeah, it's definitely, definitely changed the way I looked at a lot of things. And the way I look at, a lot of other athletes, and, how athletes are so different, and what works for one,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily work for another, and kind of understanding the way they train and the way they work. I suppose being a psychologist, I watch a lot of people and I get a lot from that,
Yeah.
learning from other people. So yeah, definitely that's been a huge benefit, I would say, to my training and my outlook on sport and life,
Good.
really.
I mean, that's something I've been working a lot with as well over the more recent years, if you like, and really kind of getting into that mindset part of the whole overall picture of athletes. So athletes are generally absolutely, a lot of are terrible. They're and I was the same at some stage as well. Forever beating themselves up, never good enough, should have been better, comparing themselves to others, and once they can kind of stay within their own world and deal with what's happening in their own mind and use that as their strength and really kind of build that confidence and know how to do it, you do find
Yeah.
everything just clicks for them. No longer
Mhm.
are they worrying about the little issues that are really not important. They're just able to focus on the event that they're targeting. If they've got a big goal that they're focusing towards, they don't have those same anxiety or stress issues leading into it. They can go into it quite precisely or kind of
Mhm.
methodically, if you like, and then once they hit that event day, they've made themselves a process to get to that
Mhm.
point and know exactly what they're doing and stay calm and put everything
Yeah.
into action. But I
I
love that nowadays with athletes.
it's so important, I think, as well. We don't, a lot of the time, I mean, not even as athletes, but as people in general, we don't give ourselves a lot of credit for the things that we do. And I think for athletes, we're very quick to, like say, we compare ourselves to other athletes and other people's achievements, but
Yeah,
we rarely take a step back and reflect on the stuff, or where we've come from, or how far we've gone, the things you've achieved. And I think it's really, really important to reflect, because if you don't reflect, you'll never learn,
yeah,
and the things that you've done. And that is massive. Like, it is yeah, it is so important. I always think it is proper that saying, 90% mental, 10% physical.
oh
I
yeah,
think that is true.
it is.
Definitely.
I agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
no, but that's brilliant. I think that's going to help you. Well, yeah, not just in sport, but as you say, just life in general. So yeah,
Yeah.
um,